The first thing I noticed about the village was the silence. No birds chirping, no children laughing, no wind rustling through the trees. Just silence. It was as if the village itself was holding its breath, waiting for something or someone. I didn't know it then, but that silence was a warning. A warning I should have heeded. My name is Chioma, and I was posted to this village for my youth service. I remember the day I arrived. The sun was high, and the air was thick with heat. The road leading into the village was narrow, flanked by dense, towering trees that seemed to close in the deeper I went. By the time I arrived at the village square, my shirt clung to my skin with sweat, and my throat was parched. The villagers greeted me with smiles, but their eyes were empty, like they were looking right through me. It was unsettling, but I chalked it up to shyness or unfamiliarity. I was, after all, an outsider. They offered me food and water, and I accepted, not knowing that was my first mistake. The first few days were normal, or so I told myself. I settled into my small room at the back of the village school where I would be teaching. The children were quiet, almost too quiet, but I thought it was just their nature. They stared at me during lessons, their wide, unblinking eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. I tried to make them laugh, to engage them with stories and games, but they only nodded or shook their heads. They spoke in whispers, their voices barely above a breath. It was unsettling, but I told myself it was just a cultural difference. Maybe they weren't used to strangers. Then, things started to change. At first, it was small things, little oddities I could explain away if I tried hard enough. My clothes, which I folded neatly at night, would be slightly disheveled in the morning. My chalk would disappear from the classroom, only to reappear in strange places. The villagers would always be standing in small groups, murmuring to one another, falling silent whenever I passed. Then, I noticed I couldn't leave the village. I had planned to visit the nearest town to buy supplies, but every time I tried to walk down the road that led out, I would find myself back at the school, no matter how far I walked. At first, I thought I was just tired or confused. But after the third time, I knew something was wrong. I asked the villagers about it, but they just smiled and said, "This is your home now." Home? No. This wasn't my home. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't. And the worst part was, I didn't know why. It was the food and water that finally made me understand. Every time I ate or drank, I felt weaker, like my energy was being drained. My thoughts became foggy, and I started forgetting things, like why I wanted to live in the first place. The villagers kept bringing me more food, more water, insisting I eat. "You need your strength," they'd say. But I didn't feel strong. I felt trapped. One night, I woke up to the sound of whispering outside my door. I froze, my heart pounding. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, but I couldn't make out the words. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't move. It was like I was paralyzed. The door creaked open, and I saw shadows moving in the darkness. I closed my eyes, pretending to sleep, praying they'd go away. When I opened my eyes again, it was morning, and the door was closed. But I knew it wasn't a dream. I started avoiding the food and water. I'd pretend to eat, then hide the food when no one was looking. I drank rainwater I collected in a bucket outside my window. Slowly, my mind began to clear. I remembered why I was there, why I needed to leave. But I still couldn't find a way out. Then, I noticed something strange about the villagers. They never aged. The children stayed children, the adults stayed the same. It was as if time had stopped for them. And then it hit me, this village wasn't just trapping people. It was feeding on them. The food, the water, it was keeping us here, draining our life, our time. I knew I had to escape. I waited until nightfall, when the village was quiet. I packed a small bag with the little food I had left and crept out of my room. The moon was bright, casting long shadows on the ground. I avoided the main road, knowing it would just bring me back. Instead, I followed a narrow path through the forest, hoping it would lead me out. The forest was dark and eerie, but I kept going, my heart racing with every step. I could hear whispers behind me, growing louder, closer. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I ran until my legs burned, until I thought I couldn't run anymore. And then, I saw it, a break in the trees, a road leading out of the village. I didn't stop until I was far away, until the village was just a distant memory. I collapsed on the side of the road, tears streaming down my face. I was free. Looking back, I realized how close I came to losing myself. That village, it wasn't just a place. It was a trap, designed to keep people there forever. I learned that sometimes, things that seem too good to be true, like endless food and water, can be the most dangerous. And I learned to trust my instincts, to listen to that little voice inside that tells you when something's wrong. I never went back to that village. I don't know if it's still there, if it's still trapping people. But I do know this, not everything is as it seems. And sometimes, the hardest thing to do is also the most important, to walk away. That's my story. A story of silence, of shadows, of survival. A story I never forget.